If you allow it to, the soil and the earth is just, it's alive and it can heal. It has this magical power to heal, just like if we had a cut on our arm or something and it heals, the land is like that too. I'm a 5th generation farmer with my brother Max from northeast Nebraska. Our hometown is Oakland. I had, as a child, wanted to come back to the farm. I had a talk with my dad and he said, well, no matter how much you love farming, he's like, it's really, really tough occupation to make it in. This was probably in the early 90s, so coming out of the 1980s where the family farmers got beat up pretty good in the farm crisis. So I'm sure that all was on his mind, but he encouraged my brother and I to try other things, but I kept being kind of drawn back to the farm, and it's the best decision I ever made was to come back to Nebraska. Approximately 15 years ago, I started learning about the power of drawdown of emissions by more biodiverse farming operations. And then I got to tour a bunch of farms across Nebraska who were going above and beyond in how they cared for the soil and how they were trying to preserve and retain their water resources by using more biodiverse systems and just a more rotational system, both crops and animals. And my simple mind thought that we could really be part of the solution. My brother and I, we started advocating changes with the family business, and that took a while because we had to go through a learning journey on how to apply these practices. We had to talk about this at the kitchen table, and everybody had to agree, to be able to move forward with trying something new. And it wasn't always easy conversations to make some of those changes. But what we found out is that my father had retained and been holding this information from when he farmed as a younger person. They were doing a lot of the things that my brother and I wanted to try. He had experience, and when I started talking about I'm just gonna do a waterway and plant rye with the drill and see how it comes up next year, that was the first step we did. And as I started going to seeding, Dad would remember the settings for the various seed, even though it had been decades since he had used this kind of stuff. He knew what areas grew the best of these small grain grasses. And so he had this wealth of knowledge all of a sudden, and it made that, what was tougher conversations a lot funner when we were able to tap into his really brilliant mind.
The changes Graham and Max made were new to them, but not new to the land, because beneath every field lies a kind of memory, roots and rotations, stories and systems, a history underfoot. And with each step forward, they were uncovering what had always been there.
Soybeans are a pretty new rotational crop into the Nebraska farm system. Before that, there was a lot of grass rotations with wheat or rye going on in the area, and a lot of hay, a lot of alfalfa. There's more pasture land. They were using small grains. They had those principles of trying to keep more roots in the ground, trying to have diverse, rotations, increasing biodiversity. They were trying to attack erosion. Sometimes they won, sometimes they lost, and just really using animals as more of a fertilization technique. All things that we're trying to do, more of again. But we had forgot some of those basics as we were using technologies and chemistry to help us become more efficient farmers. But we did lose touch of some of those things.
What began as a family story has widened over time. Graham has uncovered a legacy, written by his ancestors, that connects his farm to the community and the people who were here long before.
There's some also really cool writings about those that homesteaded our area. They talk about their first seasons, establishing the farm, the different kinds of things they were doing, grain, sorghum. A lot of sorghum was being produced around the area for sugar and different kinds of cooking. They also learned a little bit from the Omaha tribal farmers who were there when we arrived, and they became great educators on how to live in a climate as harsh as Nebraska can be with all these extremes. And it's really cool also to hear, really positive stories about how the tribal members, despite all the challenges and all the changes that are starting to take place, how respectful they were to our family and how they were there and how they were friends. And I think that kindness and hospitality over the last few years, as I've learned more about those relationships by reading these things, it just makes me want to try to do better, to take steps towards farming in a way that tries to replicate what the prairie was doing.
Graham's grandmother was the keeper of history, Clippings, letters, handwritten notes, chronicling a legacy that stretched all the way back to the 1860s. Through her careful records, Graham uncovered a Nebraska that few remember.
The supermarket in Lyons, Nebraska, the person that worked at the supermarket spoke both Omaha and English because, there was just this interesting time and people could be bilingual and were communicating, and we were all part of one community in this space. And a bunch of that just really isn't talked about or known, and I wouldn't know these things unless that information was stored. And so I really do think there could be a friendly, voluntary call to action that we do better at capturing this information and sharing it with others, telling those stories and learning from those stories. And I don't think we often do good enough. And if I didn't have, someone like my grandmother that was really tracking this stuff, I wouldn't be able to put a lot of these pieces together either. We're definitely losing, stuff from brilliant people that have been a part of Nebraska agriculture in rural areas for a long time. It feels like every month I lose a mentor. And with them, you lose that whole line of information that we could be learning from. And not only that history just instills a sense of pride when you can just learn a little bit more about the past and how you got to be here or whatever. That's powerful.
History isn't just something Graham studies, it's something his family lived through. The farm crisis of the 1980s shaped his family's land, their decisions, and his understanding of what it takes to build a resilient operation.
We stretched thin, we lost some land, some family land too, and it kind of hurts, that happened, but things happen for a reason, and it probably made us better. It probably helped aid the pathway that we're on, and we're going to do better what we're doing. And if something's natural that fits arises, we have the ability to be able to take on more. But we were burnt in the 80s, coming out of the 80s and into the 90s a little bit. So just learning not to put ourselves in a position of uncertainty. Every year on our farm we do trials or try different things, and some of them we keep, some of them didn't work out the way we wanted it to, but we could see that if we made improvements through this experience that we could do it better. So start small and do pilots or experiments, and talk to other farmers that are already a couple steps ahead or have experience in some of these areas. Small experiments can also quietly shut down some of the creative ideas you think you might work out, but those are good because when we fail we learn from that. And so failure is not really necessarily a bad thing, but you as a business, you want to de-risk that, and so you start small, you learn from that, and then you can grow up if it continues to fit in your system.
Small experiments help minimize risk, but they don't eliminate it. For Graham and Max, not every change went smoothly. Some pushed the land too far, too fast. One example is when they tried switching to non-GMO soybeans, but the land had other plans.
The land wasn't ready. It needed kind of a healing moment, and non-GMO soybeans, they don't tolerate glyphosate, so you can't use that. What we've noticed is that wheats have started to evolve so they can actually still live through some glyphosate applications. If you take it off, it's just they go crazy. My brother and I just couldn't keep up with it. That's a challenge from some of the experimentation, just good intentions, but maybe just went a little bit too far in that case. Still not a position to break us, but definitely put some stress on us that we weren't expecting, Those kind of things will come up when you're experimenting, and you just kind of got to figure your way through it and do the best you can.
The markers of success look different these days. For Graham, it's not just about yields or margins. It's about seeing signs of life returning, sometimes in small ways, sometimes with a burst of wings and color.
I have started to be more aware of what's around, and then started to see more diversity in the animals around the place. And of course, we've been working on infusing different kinds of more native species. The last 5 years, we just had 2 acres on every quarter section, on every 160 acres that we put into wildlife set-aside. It could be a more marginal area. Maybe it's got a erosion gully going through it or something. And the last 2 harvests, for the first time in over a decade, we've had pheasants flying out of every one, because that's all the space it needs for them to start coming back. Walking around our farm place, just you go around the back and you can hear the pheasants calling all through the field. It's one of the most rewarding things that we've felt, is bringing them back. But it's all the diversity that you see, and just the way that makes you feel, that's really powerful. But admittingly, we still have a long ways to go. And so we're gonna, just kind of keep trying to do more to mimic the prairie and continue to try to dig up information and learn from those that have gone before us or have experiences that we don't. And we just hope that we can honor the land the way that others had honored it before us.
Graham's work is a reminder the land doesn't start or end with one generation. It's a responsibility rooted in the past and shaped by what we choose to do next.